Okay, last week we were learning, the last thing we were learning is if cold meat touches cold cheese, if they're completely dry, you could just use them, you don't have to wash them at all. If they're a little bit wet, so then you have to wash them thoroughly. The minhag is to do it 3 times. Now, what happens if one of them is a little bit fatty, like butter is fatty, and it touches meat? So then you have to not only just rinse it, but you have to actually wash it properly to make sure there's nothing there. Okay, next is where we're up to. So now what happens if a cold dairy knife cuts cold meat? Okay? You have a cold salami, corned beef, whatever. I mean, you know, you're slicing it with a knife, a milchik knife. So the din is like this. You need to clean the place where you cut extremely well. In addition to that, the minhag is to be machmer, that like we learned this, you cut off a little klipa, meaning you just cut off a little thin piece that it should be. Why? Because the knife has a little fattiness on it. The fattiness goes into the meat, and therefore you clean it. Now, what do you do with the knife? It was all cold. But the problem is, because the knife had pressure and the knife has a little fattiness on it, and you cut the meat with it, so because it's cold, you don't have to do anything hot with the knife. But halacha is you have to stick it into the ground 10 times in different places. Because you can't stick it in the same place 10 times, because then the earth is soft. If the earth is soft, it's not going to... What's the purpose of putting it into hard ground 10 times? Because the pressure of the knife that went into the meat, okay, through pressure, so now by sticking it 10 times in the ground, you're using the same pressure to get it out of the knife, and it goes into the ground. So then the knife is good again, good to go. Now the same thing, what happens if you cut hard cheese with a meat knife? So again, you have to peel a little bit where you cut it, and you have to have stick the thing in the ground. What? I've never seen a reason why 10, but the Shulchan Aruch says the minhag is to do it 10 times. This time the Chachamim estimated that that's how much it actually gets out from anything that's in it. Okay, next. What happens if you cut with a meat knife, you cut cucumbers? Cold cucumbers, cold, clean meat knife, and you want to eat the cucumbers with milk. So then the din is, you don't have to do klipa, but the problem is, okay, the din is like this. Because you're cutting the thing, the fruit, and there's moisture in the fruit, and it's still pressured because the cucumber is hard. So you're cutting it, you're still using pressure, or whatever it may be. So then, a little bit of the fattiness of the knife goes into this cut, and because it's liquidy, it goes a little bit into the area. So then you need to cut it even less in klipa. Kedei klipa means you cut it, but it has to be thin enough that a whole piece comes off. The other way it's called gereda. Gereda is even less than kedei klipa. You just, cut off a little bit, like rub off a little bit of the fruit, and then it's good.
A brand new knife, or what are you doing?
No, we're talking about a halachic knife that cuts cucumbers, and now you want to use the cucumbers for dairy.
But you have to cut the klipa, you said, a little bit.
No, you don't. You need less than klipa.
Oh, less than klipa.
No, but washing itself is not going to be enough because the moisture makes it go and it'll drop into this thing. So therefore, you have to just rub off a little bit.
You cut the cucumbers already; they're already cut. You can't do that for each piece that you cut. No. For example, you took the meat knife,
Right.
had the cutting board, you chopped the cucumbers into little pieces.
Oh.
And you want to use that.
Yeah, then you're going to have to really wash it very, very well. And even then, it's in halacha, it says you shouldn't use those cucumbers for dairy.
But within, is it in 24 hours or outside?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
No, because here we're talking about pressure. with the fattiness on the knife. It's nothing to do with 24 hours. But what happens if you cut a very soft cheese, like cottage cheese, okay? You use the knife for cottage cheese. So then there's no stochir sakina. Now all you have to do is wash in a little bit of rinse with the water and...
Rather, when you're cutting the cucumber, maybe it's only the first piece, not the
No, it keeps going around.
Really?
We'll soon get there. In the next din, I don't forget to today probably. But in something sharp, okay, if you cut an onion, okay, which is sharp. One second. If you cut an onion, slice it in half, okay? There's an argument how far the fleischiks of the knife goes into the onion. Some people say what you need, what's the expression you have to take, kadei netila, which is 2 centimeters. And other poskim say no, it goes into the whole, yeah, the taste because of the pressure of the knife, it goes into the entire onion. And then in order for the onion to be, let's say, if it's a meat knife, in order for the onion to stay parve, you need 60 times in the onion the size of the knife, of the blade, which you're not going to have. Now what happens if you cut the onion, you dice the onion. Then, according to all opinions, that onion is halachic. I mean, there's nothing what to talk about. Now, by softer things, nobody says it's going to go into the whole thing because it's not sharp. The sharpness, we'll see 3 concepts of what sharpness does. So then you just have to rinse it off well because a little bit went into the greda or, things like that. But if you're going to slice a cucumber, slice it thin, then you can use with a meat knife, even though it's clean, you can't use it for dairy. You're going to have to just keep it for fleischiks.
You're saying only if the knife is dirty.
No, even if the knife is dirty is not what to talk about. So even if the knife is clean, but there's fattiness on the knife that doesn't get cleaned.
You can't use the whole cucumber.
There is shamnunis. That's what it says.
I heard only onions were the issue. I never heard that cucumbers or tomatoes or...
No, if you slice it, because you need to wash it, and you need greda, but you can't do greda if you slice it into little things.
Salad also, you're doing a dairy salad.
Yeah, so therefore, if you have a dairy salad, you have to use a parve knife or a halachic knife. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Okay. Next. Okay. Now, coming to something sharp, because this is very common. You cut a lemon with a knife. You cut. Okay, I'll give you an example. Many people put milk into their tea. If you're English, yeah, you put milk. Yeah.
Not a requirement.
You put milk. By them, it's a requirement. It's like milk and coffee. Okay, so what happens if because you want to have a coffee, tea, with a little bit of milk, and you want to put a lemon into the tea. Now, if you're going to cut the lemon with a meat knife, okay, and you're going to slice the lemon, take a slice of lemon and put it into the tea, the problem is you can't add milk to it. Because even though the knife wasn't used for 24 hours, but the fact that it's a fleischic knife, a meat knife, and it's sharp, so number one, it goes into the piece that you're doing it. And then, secondly, even if it's not a ben yoimei, it's also it doesn't matter. And the third thing is, there's no heter if not by not, like we were discussing. So there's 3 issues. Number one...
It's sharp, right? That's why not doesn't...
Right, because it's sharp, it doesn't go. So therefore, when you cut with a knife, that even if it's cold, duchke the sakin is going to work anyway to make the hole. And again, some people hold that according to the Ramah, it goes into the whole thing, and then you need 60 times, which you're not going to have. But so you have what are sharp things? Radish, onion, garlic, horseradish, herring. Very sharp spices, sour pickles that are, have a lot of vinegar in it.
How do you cut the onions for herring? You can't use a meat knife?
You could use a meat knife, but you can't just put the herring with milchiks.
No, but he's saying meat and fish.
It's not a problem. You can allow to cook fish in a meat pot as long as it's clean, even if it was used that day. So this is not a problem. You can cut, if you want to make schmaltz herring and you want to cut onions, you could use a milchik or fleishik knife.
So for a cucumber, even if it's an Eino Ben Yoma knife,
It's you should. It says in halacha you shouldn't do it because duch get a sakina.
Better to use a power of a knife, is what you're saying, right?
Huh?
It's better to use a power of a knife.
Better to use the power of a knife.
Better just not even.
It's interesting. In Russia, they didn't have power of b'chal for a very simple reason. They couldn't afford anything, so they're happy to have a meat knife and a dairy knife. So they didn't have, but they were careful. They knew the women knew the dinim, and they knew that you can't. If you cut with a meat knife, it's meat. You know.
If it was used, if you cut cucumbers and you put it into dairy salad,
But the evid you could be meiko if it's not dar v'chorev. But if you cut an onion with a meat knife and you put it into a salad with cheese, yes, you got a problem. There's another issue that happens many times, and there's also machlekes, but lepel, most people are lenient. What happens? I cut and I want to chop up an onion, yeah. So I cut the onion with a fleishik knife. Then I put it into milchik a blender. Okay? So now, the onion was cut with a fleishik knife, makes it fleishik. Then the milchik blender makes it milchik. So there's different opinions. The bottom line is that Rabbanim I usually make because it happens too often. People can just... A lady called me, right before I came to Mincha, a lady called me today. She had 2 fleishik frying pans, big ones. And her daughter, and one daughter said, make sure to tell her it wasn't me. It was my sister. Anyway, she made dairy waffles in the fleishik frying pans.
With ice cream in it.
And they used both frying pans. They made milchika waffles. I don't know what the milk, but it was milchika waffles, mamish milchika. So she called me, what's the story? So he said, listen, because it was Eino Ben Yoma, the frying pans, the waffles are good. And then I asked her, what type of frying pans? Are they non-stick? Because if they're non-stick, then you can't kasher them. So she said, yeah, it's non-stick. So I said, well, you have to throw out 2 frying pans and take it off your daughter's salary. She said, you mean her allowance? I said, no, I mean her salary, whatever. But yeah, she had to throw out 2 frying pans today because the kid made milchik waffles in a fleishik frying pan that you can't kasher.
Better to buy non-stick.
Better to buy non-stick. If you're shlemazel that you make problems, yeah, you buy a non-stick. But everybody likes the non-stick better. It's so much easier.
so the blender is fine if you do that all.
It's a machlek, isn't it? We'll see. Well, I'm not here tomorrow. But there are different opinions. He brings on over here also that.
Yeah, can you eat the waffles?
Yeah, that's the question. Can you eat the waffles?
Waffles you could eat, right? If it's not Eino Ben Yoma,
Yeah, the waffles are not a problem because it's
it's Eino Ben Yoma.
it's Eino Ben Yoma, so the waffles are good. Okay, anyway, it's a whole thing here because if it's not by not, you be diavad, can you be making not by not? Okay.